Hey guys, Lisa Figueroa here, board certified criminal defense attorney in Florida. I'm back to talk to you about the David case. I've been seeing a lot of stuff out there about different and kind of some mixed messages about whether or not there's been arrest or new suspects and grand jury proceedings. Apparently a new video just came out about an hour ago and someone asked me to react to this. Let's see what's going on.
A major clue just revealed in connection with the mysterious death and disposal of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, the teenager whose body was allegedly found in singer David's car. Turns out the private investigator who's been looking into this case just made a bombshell revelation on social media we got to talk about. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, we got this David update that we got to talk about, and it may give us some sort of insight into what happened to 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who, as you know, her body was found in a Tesla that was allegedly registered to singer David back in September out in LA. There have been no arrests, there have been no charges filed. There has been reporting, particularly from TMZ, that possibly an investigative grand jury out in LA may be hearing evidence. We did previous sidebars on that. You can check it all out. But one underlying question that we don't have the answer to, and from a forensic point of view, perhaps is a complicating factor, is what happened to Celeste? How did she die? What was the true state of her body? How was she moved? Which is why the update that I'm about to get into is so interesting. We want to talk about complicating. You know what else is complicating? The fact that the cause and manner of death hasn't been released, and that the details from the medical examiner's office have been sealed by court order. You know, according to a release from the medical examiner's office, it said at 10:54 a.m. on Friday, November 21st, the County of Los Angeles Department of Medical Examiner received a court order initiated by the Los Angeles Police Department to place a security hold on medical examiner case number 2025-14252 Celeste Rivas Hernandez. No records or details associated with the case, including the cause and manner of death and medical examiner report, can be released or posted on the website until further notice. And then So
the fact that they want the medical examiner's report sealed is not really surprising, especially one, because it's a high profile case, due to the sensitive nature of the contents of that, due to the fact that it's a minor that is the victim in this case. Sometimes it could be protecting the family and that they don't want to hear the details that could be very gruesome or disturbing, and for them to hear it for the first time on TV rather than being approached by law enforcement directly. So there's a lot of different reasons. We can't read too much into that, and so it's not a big shocker that it is going to be sealed, and the court would agree to do that.
Had the Robbery Homicide Division that released a statement not only addressing this, but also addressing the media reporting that Celeste was decapitated and that her body was either entirely or partially frozen. Now, this is based primarily on reporting from TMZ. They had a statement that said, Robbery Homicide Division statement on Celeste Rivas investigation, Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Police Department is aware of the recent stories posted by various media outlets about the David Celeste Rivas investigation and would like to dispel some misinformation contained in their reporting. The body of Celeste Rivas was not frozen when it was discovered on September 8th, 2025. She had not been decapitated. As far as the court order, the LAPD sought to seal the records of the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's investigation into Celeste Rivas' death. That order was sought only to ensure detectives from Robbery Homicide Division learned of important information surrounding her death before the media and the public. The order was not sought to undermine transparency. Okay, now we got to talk about this update. And this
is why it's so important to kind of fact check what you hear, or don't believe everything that you hear online. A lot of this is speculation, and with social media, the way things can just kind of run rampant and get a life of their own, we don't really have all the facts. So before you rush to judgment, it's really important to be careful and be discerning about the information that you hear.
Update concerns Steve Fisher. We've had him on the program before. Steve is the private investigator who was hired by the owner of the property where David had reportedly been staying in the Hollywood Hills. That property was apparently near the Tesla. That property, by the way, was searched by authorities. Now, Steve has come out and made some comments about his investigation, including things like this.
But I will say this, there are some things that, and I'm talking physical evidence that was at that house that is there could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her, and it's scary, sadistic stuff. And that's why we're trying to learn more about that. I wish I could say more, but for obvious reasons I can't. But it doesn't have to do with how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot at the time, and things just, their timing was just off as far as getting this done. But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind.
And he was recently discussed on another episode of Sidebar, where he made a post on X seemingly fighting back about potentially being held in contempt of court for allegedly talking about or discussing a case that he had seemingly testified about. He really fought back against that allegation as well. And we assume this was about the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. Not definitively confirmed, but when you read between the lines of his message, it seemed to be that. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But now, given what he has said about his findings, this is what we need to talk about. He just posted this on X. Quote, "Although my words have been misquoted by some, what I actually said about certain items found at the Doheny address was that they were, quote, items you would expect to find on a farm rather than in a home in the Hollywood Hills. One of those items was a burn cage incinerator, advertised to burn at 1600 degrees. Human cremations are typically performed at approximately 1400 degrees. An incinerator is not legal to use within city limits and serves no legitimate purpose at a residential property in the Hollywood Hills. Some will argue that this item was intended as a prop for a video. If that were the case, it raises several obvious questions. Why would a 55-pound bird cage be delivered to a private residence instead of directly to a prop design?"
I feel like I want to call my thing not necessarily. Not necessarily. There's all these assumptions. We don't know. Okay, so this is apparently the big news, this burn cage incinerator. Who has one of these in their home? This is not normal, certainly not in Hollywood Hills. However, sure, it could be that it's a prop, but then why would the prop be delivered to the house rather than whoever's in charge of that in the production team? The problem with these things is that I don't think that we can jump to any kind of assumptions. It's weird, right? It's weird. That's all that anyone can say, or it's different. Does that mean that it was before? Was this for a plan of, as they said, disposing the body afterwards? Was it something that was being used for something prior? What were the plans? Who? Is there DNA, fingerprints, anything on this? Who had this? Again, this is the investigator for the property owner. Who was actually in the property? Who actually brought that there? Is David part of this? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to give us more details of that, but just because it's there, yes, it's odd. Yes, it's concerning. But what does it mean? I don't think we can jump to that conclusion just yet.
Production house. Why would it be ordered before departing on an extended world tour? And why was it never used in any video production? It is also important to note that there were additional items present that could be used in conjunction with the burn cage. To be very clear, this burn cage was not used. It was still new and in the box. However, given that Celeste Rivas Hernandez's remains were ultimately found in the Tesla trunk, the presence of an incinerator at the same residence associated with that vehicle necessarily raises questions about intent. The burn cage was not taken during the search warrant, and because it was not used, it appears it's not of importance to any possible criminal investigation. But we think it's important context, even if not criminal. The burn cage and other related items were delivered to the residence under a false name, although the deliveries were accepted at the property. Attached is a photograph of the actual burn cage incinerator as found at the residence, along with an image from Dr. Byrne's advertising materials for the product. Hashtag Celeste Rivas Hernandez, hashtag David. And he does include those photos, by the way. What do we make of this? Let me bring on Matt Irvine.
Okay, so it seems that the investigator is implying, why would we find this burn cage there at the house, right at the same place where the car was left with her remains? Again, it's unclear. This is a box that was delivered under someone else's name. Well, that's kind of odd, right? Why would we use a fake name? Is it a fake name? I can't tell whether or not. It says a false name, but is it a false name because it's a totally made-up name or just someone who didn't live at that residence? Again, I don't know. I always tend to want to give someone the benefit of the doubt. Now, the fact that the police didn't take that into custody, so what does that mean? The police were there. We know they executed a search warrant on that house. They were all over throughout that house collecting evidence, and that was not taken. So, Do we know that it was there at the time? Do we know if it was arrived there afterwards when the investigator then went to go check the property? Did the police just photograph it? And that happens sometimes. They don't have to necessarily collect it. They may not be able to tie it to David at the time or whoever is the potential suspect, but they're aware they don't take everything that is found in the residence, and it's not evidence of a crime, but I am sure that if it was there at the time that they executed the search warrant, there would be either body camera footage or a photograph of everything that was out in plain sight. And certainly that's something big enough that it's not going to be hidden somewhere or something they wouldn't have seen if it was there.
To talk about this, retired detective, law enforcement instructor, Matt, so good to have you here. Quite the statement from Steve Fisher, making it public. Your thoughts if this is true?
Well, I think Steve Fisher's remarks are very well considered. I cannot think of a legitimate, innocent reason why a burn cage would be received at a private residence, why it would be ordered under a false name. I also, frankly,
let's
can't
actually just start
understand.
there. Keep your thought.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is about a false name, if he's a celebrity, he doesn't want people knowing that he's staying there. Thoughts?
Fair enough, but if he's got
So yeah, just like I was saying, we don't know. We don't know if the false name was a friend or if it was someone else, or he's saying, well, because you're a celebrity, it's not uncommon that a celebrity might have stuff shipped under a pseudonym and under a false name. But again, that's assuming it was David that actually ordered this. And that shouldn't be too hard to find out, right? How was it purchased? It wasn't cash. So someone's credit card, someone's method of payment had to have been used for this. So if this was such a big piece of evidence, I think that at the end of the day, the police are going to be able to get to the bottom of it.
a bunch of people that he's working with because he intends to use this as part of a concert tour, as part of a video. He's got a whole staff of people that can order something for him. I don't understand why he would need to do it under an assumed name. But your point is well taken. That could be an innocent explanation. But again, to Steve's points, if that is indeed the intent for this item, why is it delivered to a private residence? Why is it not with him on tour? Why is it not taken to some location to be used for some kind of a video? That said, I also can't think of a good reason why.
Okay, let me see how much one of these things weighs. Okay, so maybe 60 to 70 pounds.
For this item, why is it delivered to a private residence? Why is it not with him on tour? Why is it not taken to some location to be used for some kind of a video?
It just came in. I mean, why was it not taken on tour? If you just got something, I wouldn't be taking it anywhere yet. So I don't know that. I don't quite follow that logic.
That said, I also can't think of a good reason why LAPD didn't seize this item. I mean, if you're conducting an investigation into a body found in the trunk of a car, one of your
I already explained my thoughts on that.
working theories has got to be that this body was placed there in order to move it from the scene where the death occurred and then transport it to some third location to conceal it or dispose of it. And if you're looking at the possibility that somebody is trying to dispose of a body and you search the residence of a person of interest in that case and you find what is essentially a home crematorium, why don't you take that? I know that when you're serving a search warrant, you can only seize the things that the court authorized you to seize and that you told the court you expected to find there. I'm sure nobody expected to find this item there. But what you do in a search warrant when you find something evidentiary that was unexpected is you write what's called a piggyback warrant. It's a simple addendum where you say, hey, judge, while serving that search warrant that you issued, we found this other thing. We think it's evidence. We'd like to seize that too. It's a typical one-page addendum that's tacked onto your warrant. I've never seen a judge not sign one of those, and I don't know why that wasn't done in this case.
So let me ask you this, Matt.
So yeah, this is true that anytime you get a warrant, the warrant actually states what they believe or expect to find in the house. So in a situation where it's something small, like drugs, the police are able to search anywhere where it would be reasonable that drugs could be hidden, which really opens the door to anything. But for example, when it's something that's a large item, then they're not allowed to go, let's say in a small drawer or a shoebox to be looking for a burn cage. Obviously, this is an obvious thing. So he raises the question of, okay, why didn't they go back? Well, I don't know when they found this. I don't know how long the police may or may not have known known about this. And again, we don't know what or if there is any direct link between this and what they're investigating, even if it seems a little weird. And I don't know that it's weird or a shocking coincidence that something like that is found when you also find it near a decomposed body, but I think eventually maybe the puzzle pieces will start lining up better.
You could be 100% right. Right. First of all, assuming this is true, that a burn cage was delivered there, and assuming for a moment that law enforcement didn't seize it. Okay, let's say that's accurate. I guess the question would be either, like you said, it was beyond the realm, it was beyond the scope of a search warrant. Maybe they didn't amend it for whatever reason. Or is it possible, when we're trying to think about what happened to Celeste, her body showed absolutely no sign of burning whatsoever, and they couldn't definitively establish that the purchase, the delivery of this incinerator was related to her in any way?
Well, that's a fair statement. I mean, and as Steve Fisher mentioned, it was unused, but it seems like because of the circumstances that this body was found in the trunk of the car, that the crime of disposal of the body was incomplete, that there was a plan, or at least the beginnings of a plan, to conceal or dispose of the body, and for one reason or another, that plan was not fully executed. And that doesn't make the burn cage any less evidentiary. Again, a search warrant doesn't have to reach the level of probable cause to arrest. You just have to argue that you're investigating a crime and that this item is potentially evidence of that crime. So it's a much lower standard than what you would need to arrest somebody. And I think that standard is well met just by the circumstances of the discovery of Celeste's body.
Yeah, but the item itself really doesn't tell us anything. I mean, this is an unopened box, right? So the inference is, okay, maybe whoever wanted to dispose of the body potentially was thinking about burning it after the fact. I am way more interested in finding out what any kind of warrants regarding any digital evidence, searches, kind of very similar to the Brian Walsh case, which we'll talk about later. You have allegations of someone trying to dispose of a body, but claiming they weren't responsible for the murder. So in this case, this doesn't really tell us anything about who's involved, why. Really, we need to know so much more. The fact that there's an unopened box that could have been used for that still doesn't tell us anything. Well, it tells us that someone was either going to do a really hot bonfire, or they potentially could be trying to dispose of a body, or it may have been a prop for a video and they for some reason had nowhere else to store it, coincidentally along the same time that they find the body out there. So yeah, it is very odd, but not telling enough.
If somebody had used that, could it thoroughly incinerate a body and there'd be no human composition left? There'd be no human remains left?
You know, I'm not familiar with that product. I trust Steve Fisher when he says that an incineration of a human body, a cremation, takes place at 1400 degrees. If this thing could go to 1600, I don't know what its capacity is at 55 pounds. I can't imagine it's that large.
Now, this picture was what caught my eye at the beginning, this cage that was actually burnt and looks used and burns up to 1600. And this is the kind of clickbait, the stuff that draws you in and you're like, oh my gosh, look what they found. I didn't realize until we started watching this that this was actually a closed, unopened package. So that photo that they're showing there, initially I thought was like in David's backyard or something, but that's not the case. Okay, we're gonna stop there for now because it looks like this is just gonna be more ongoing speculation about what this could mean or what do you think it means. But the only big reveal was this burn cage, which we saw was unopened, and there's just still so many unanswered questions. We'll keep bringing you any updates as they come. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you soon. Take care.